The training hall fell silent as Instructor Vexnall circled around the human cadet like a predator sizing up wounded prey. His four eyes gleamed with barely concealed contempt, mandibles clicking in what every species recognized as amusement. "And this," he announced to the assembled class of 200 cadets from across the Galactic Coalition, "is what desperation looks like. When a species realizes it has nothing to offer the greater universe, they send, well, this." The human stood perfectly still. Her name tag read Lieutenant Kira Moss, though I had already memorized it from the roster. I was Thalen, a documentation specialist from Arcturus Prime, tasked with recording the training program for the Coalition archives. In my 3 cycles doing this job, I had never seen an instructor so openly hostile. Kira's face remained neutral, but I noticed her jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. She was shorter than most species in the room, built compact and dense in that peculiar way humans were constructed. Her hair pulled back in the tight regulation style all military personnel wore. "Tell me, human," Vexnall hissed, leaning close enough that his breath ruffled her hair.
"What exactly makes your species think you belong among the warrior elite with no natural armor or venom?"
"No telepathic abilities. Your planet sat isolated in your tiny corner of space until we found you, playing with primitive fusion drives like children with matches." A ripple of laughter spread through the cadets. The Krellian students clicked their claws against their desks. The Matharian twins exhaled in perfect synchronization, their version of snickering. I shifted uncomfortably in my observation pod, my tendrils curling with secondhand embarrassment. This was supposed to be an elite military academy, not a schoolyard bullying session. "Instructor," Kira said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness, "with respect, I am here because I qualified. Same as everyone else." "Qualified!" Vexnall threw his upper arms wide, a gesture of mock celebration. "Yes, yes, you squeaked through the physical requirements by the narrowest margins possible. You completed the written examinations with, what was it, 78%? Barely acceptable." He spun to face the class. "This creature's people have been spacefaring for less than 50 standard years, and they think they can stand shoulder to shoulder with civilizations that have explored the cosmos for millennia." More laughter. I noticed some of the other human cadets in the room had their fists clenched, but they remained silent. There were perhaps 15 humans, total, out of the 200 students, scattered throughout the chamber like drops of water in oil. Kira's expression never changed. That was the thing that struck me most. No anger, no shame. Just that same calm, watchful expression. "Today's exercise," Vexnall continued, "is simple combat assessment. Hand to hand, no weapons, no assistance technology. We will see what the human is truly made of beneath all that soft flesh." His mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Lieutenant Moss, you will face Garak." The silence that followed was absolute. Garak stood slowly from his seat in the back row. Even among his own kind, the Vorthian was massive. 8 feet of scaled muscle, with arms thick as tree trunks and a ridge of bone plating running down his spine. His species had evolved as apex predators on a high-gravity world where everything wanted to kill everything else. He cracked his knuckles, each pop echoing like small explosions. "Instructor," one of the human cadets called out, a young man with pale skin and nervous eyes. "This is not regulation. Weight and size classes are supposed to be matched." "Are they?" Vexnall's tone dripped with false curiosity. "How fascinating. Tell me, cadet, when enemy forces board your ship, do they politely match themselves to your size and strength before attacking?"
"Does the universe care about your regulations?"
The human cadet sat back down, silenced. I wanted to intervene. The ethical protocols of my people demanded it. But I was an observer, not a participant. My role was to document, not to influence. Still, my chromatophores flushed purple with distress as I watched Kira walk to the center of the training mat. She looked impossibly small next to Garruk. The Vorthian grinned, showing rows of serrated teeth. "Nothing personal, soft skin," he rumbled. "Just following orders." Kira nodded once. "I understand." Vexnal raised one claw. "Begin." What happened next occurred so quickly that my recording equipment nearly missed it. Garruk lunged forward with surprising speed for something his size. His massive fist swung down in an arc that would have pulverized a smaller being. Kira was not there. She had moved, not away, but toward him, inside his reach, where those long arms became a liability rather than an advantage. Her elbow struck Garrick's knee, the joint specifically, with surgical precision. The crack was audible throughout the chamber. The Vorthian's leg buckled, and as he dropped, Kira's other hand found a nerve cluster just below his jaw, a spot I had not even known existed. Garrick's eyes rolled back. All 400 pounds of him hit the mat like a falling asteroid. The entire sequence lasted perhaps 2 seconds. The training hall was so quiet I could hear the environmental systems humming. Kira stepped back from the unconscious Vorthian, her breathing barely elevated. She turned to face Vexnal, that same neutral expression on her face. "Is that satisfactory, Instructor?" she asked. Vexnal's mandibles worked soundlessly. His skin had flushed from green to a pale yellow, a sign of shock among his species. Several other instructors had half risen from their observation stations, equally stunned. You cheated somehow," Vexnal finally managed.
This is impossible! He is one of our finest! Never been defeated!
"I followed the rules as stated," Kira interrupted, her voice still calm but carrying a new edge. "Hand-to-hand combat. No weapons, no assistance technology. You did not specify that I had to fight fairly, only that I had to fight." She tilted her head slightly. "Was there something else you wanted to see, Instructor? Someone else you would like me to face?" The medical team rushed onto the mat to attend to Garruk, who was beginning to stir and groan. Kira did not move from her position, waiting. I found myself leaning forward in my observation pod, all my attention focused on this small human who had just dismantled an opponent 3 times her size. Around the chamber, I noticed other cadets doing the same. The laughter had died completely. Vexnal's color shifted through several shades before settling on a deep, angry purple. "You think yourself clever? You think one victory proves anything?" His voice had risen to a near shriek. "I will show this class. I will show everyone exactly what humans are capable of when faced with real challenges." He stabbed one claw at a control panel. The lights in the chamber dimmed, and a section of floor slid away to reveal a descending platform. "The gauntlet," someone whispered behind me. I turned to see a Metherian cadet, both heads pale with concern. He cannot be serious. No one runs the gauntlet in first term. It is a final-year examination. I had heard of the gauntlet, though I had never witnessed it. A series of combat scenarios, environmental hazards, and problem-solving exercises designed to push elite warriors to their absolute limits. Cadets trained for 3 full cycles before attempting it, and even then, the failure rate was significant. "You want to prove your species belongs here?" Vexnal snarled at Kira. "Survive the gauntlet. Alone, no support team. Complete it, and I will never question your presence again." His mandibles spread wide. "Fail, and you withdraw from the academy. You admit that humanity reached too far, too fast, and you return to your little backwater world where you belong." This was beyond protocol, beyond regulation. This was personal vendetta, dressed up as training. Kira looked at the descending platform, then back at Vexnal. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes that made my blood chill. Not fear, not anger. Something colder and far more dangerous. "What are the terms exactly, Instructor?" she asked. "I complete the gauntlet successfully, and you never question any human's right to be here?"
Not just mine. Any human cadet. Current or future. I am setting terms for the deal.
Vexnal hesitated, sensing a trap but too angry to care. "Yes, fine. Agreed."
And if I refuse?
"Then you prove my point. Humanity is weak, cowardly, unworthy of standing among the Coalition's defenders." The other human cadets were on their feet now, protests forming on their lips. Kira raised one hand, silencing them without looking away from Vexnal. "I accept," she said simply. The Haru chamber erupted in shocked muttering. I felt my chromatophores flash through a dozen colors of distress. This was madness. The gauntlet was designed for teams of experienced warriors, not individual first-term cadets, regardless of species. Kira walked toward the platform. As she passed me, I caught her eye for just a moment. What I saw there made me understand something fundamental. This human was not being forced into this trial. She had been waiting for it. The platform descended into darkness, taking Lieutenant Kira Moss with it. Above, the observation screens flickered to life, showing multiple angles of the gauntlet course. Vexnal stood with his arms crossed, mandibles set in grim satisfaction. I began recording at maximum detail, every sensor active. Whatever happened next, the galaxy needed to see it. The first stage of the gauntlet activated, and in the darkness below, something that looked like small, fragile humanity began to move. The observation screens showed Kira, standing in a cylindrical chamber roughly 30 feet in diameter. The walls were smooth metal, featureless except for small vents that hissed ominously. Above her, a countdown timer appeared, glowing red in the darkness. 10 minutes. "Stage 1, Vexnal announced to the class, his voice carrying false professorial tone. "Environmental adaptation. The chamber will cycle through 5 different atmospheric compositions, 3 gravity settings, and 2 temperature extremes. Most species require breather apparatus and gravity compensation to survive. Let us see how the fragile human manages." The first change was immediate. The gravity intensified, probably to twice standard. I watched Kira's knees buckle slightly before she adjusted her stance, spreading her weight. Smart. Her breathing changed too, becoming shallow and controlled as the atmosphere shifted to something sulfur-based, toxic to most oxygen breathers. But Kira did something unexpected. Instead of trying to hold her breath or conserve oxygen, she pulled a small device from her uniform pocket. Not standard issue. The instructors leaned forward, ready to disqualify her for using forbidden technology. Except it was not technology. It was a simple chemical rebreather, the kind miners used in primitive operations. Completely mechanical. No power source. Technically legal under the stated rules. Vexnal's mandibles clicked with irritation. The temperature plummeted next, frost forming on the walls within seconds. Kira began moving, constant motion, never staying still. She was generating heat through activity, using basic physics to counter the environmental threat. When the gravity shifted to 0.3 standard, making movement floaty and imprecise, she used the walls, pushing off them in controlled bursts rather than trying to walk normally. 6 minutes into the stage, she was still functioning. The Matherian twins were whispering calculations to each other, their 4 eyes wide with surprise. "Impossible," one of the Krellian students muttered. "My cousin attempted this stage with full environmental gear and barely made it through." Stage 1 completed. The chamber floor opened, and Kira dropped down a chute into Stage 2. Combat drones, 12 of them, hovering in formation around a circular arena, each armed with stun weaponry powerful enough to incapacitate a Vorthian. Standard protocol was to use cover, pick them off strategically, survive long enough for the timer to expire. Kira did not look for cover. She ran straight at the nearest drone, using its own body as a shield against the others. When it fired its stunner at point-blank range, she was already moving, the blast missing by inches. Her hand found a maintenance panel on its underside, something I doubt most cadets even knew existed, and ripped out a cluster of wiring. The drone sparked and fell. She caught it before it hit the ground, hurled it at 2 more drones with strength that seemed impossible for her frame. The collision sent all 3 tumbling. While they recovered, she had already eliminated 2 others using the same maintenance panel vulnerability. She memorized their design specifications, I breathed, suddenly understanding. Humans had only been in the Coalition for 50 years, but they had clearly spent that time studying everything they could access. Every schematic, every technical manual, every weakness. The remaining drones adapted, spreading out, trying to box her in. Kira dropped flat as they fired in unison, the stun beams crossing above her head. Then she was up again, using the arena's support pillars like a 3-dimensional maze, staying ahead of their targeting systems by pure speed and unpredictability. When the timer expired, 7 drones were disabled. The remaining 5 hovered uncertainly, their programming not designed for prey that fought back this effectively. Stage 3 dropped her into water. Dark, cold water that filled a tank 50 feet deep. Pressure test combined with aquatic navigation. Most species panicked in unfamiliar environments. The goal was simply to find the exit valve at the bottom and open it before drowning. Kira sank like a stone, no wasted movement. Her eyes were open, despite the murky liquid, scanning. I noticed something then, in the way she moved. Humans were not specialized for any one environment, but that meant they were adaptable to all of them. No gills, but they could hold their breath. No scales, but they could tolerate pressure changes. No natural weapons, but they could use anything as a tool. She found the valve in under a minute, twisted it open with both hands despite the resistance, and shot back toward the surface as the water drained. Vexnal was no longer smiling. His skin had gone completely pale, and his breathing slits were fluttering rapidly. Around the observation chamber, absolute silence reigned. Every cadet, every species, watched the screens with rapt attention. Stage 4 was psychological warfare. Holographic projections, sound distortions, designed to disorient and terrify. The room filled with images of death, destruction, loved ones screaming. Most cadets required counseling after this stage, even when they knew it was not real. Kira walked through it like she was strolling through a garden. Her eyes tracked each projection clinically, analyzing the technology rather than reacting to the content. When a hologram of a dying child appeared directly in front of her, begging for help, I saw her jaw tighten. But she did not stop, did not falter. She understood the test and refused to be manipulated by it. "What is she?" someone whispered. I realized I had been wondering the same thing. This was not luck. This was not even exceptional skill. This was something else. Something that went beyond individual capability. Stage 5 was the final challenge. Pure problem-solving under pressure. A room filled with lethal traps, environmental hazards changing every 30 seconds, and a single puzzle that had to be solved to escape. The puzzle was different for each species, tailored to test logic, spatial reasoning, and creativity under duress. The room activated. Walls shifted. Floor panels began glowing red, indicating imminent electrical discharge. Ceiling ports opened, preparing to release acid mist. And in the center, a complex three-dimensional matrix of light and force fields that had to be manipulated in the correct sequence. Kira studied it for exactly 5 seconds. Then she started laughing. It was not hysterical laughter, not nervous energy. It was genuine amusement, the sound of someone who had just gotten a joke after a long setup. "Oh, you magnificent bastard," she said to the empty room, to Vexnal watching above, to the gauntlet itself. "You designed this to be impossible, did you not? No single correct solution, just variations of failure." She was right. I accessed the technical specifications and felt my chromatophores flush, with shock. The final puzzle had no solution. It was meant to humble cadets, to teach them that sometimes survival meant accepting defeat gracefully. Kira walked to the wall, found a maintenance access panel, identical to the ones on the combat drones, and opened it. Inside were the power conduits for the entire stage. She traced them with her fingers, following the energy flow, then grabbed 2 specific cables and crossed them. Every trap in the room shut down simultaneously. The exit door, programmed to open only after puzzle completion, recognized the power interruption as a system failure and defaulted to safety mode, sliding open automatically. She had not solved the puzzle. She had changed the rules of the game entirely. Kira stepped through the exit and back onto the main platform. The lift raised her up into the training hall, into the stunned silence of 200 cadets and a dozen instructors. Her uniform was soaked, torn in places, covered in frost residue and scorch. Marks. Her hair had come loose from its regulation style. There was a cut above her left eye that dripped blood down her cheek. She had never looked more dangerous. Kira walked directly to Vexnal, stopped precisely 2 feet away, and stood at perfect attention. "Gauntlet completed, instructor," she said. Her voice was steady despite the physical toll. "I believe we had an agreement. You will never question the right of any human to train here. Not now. Not ever." Vexnal opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound emerged. His skin cycled through colors so rapidly it appeared to strobe. "How?" he finally managed. "How did you— You should have failed. The final stage is impossible. I designed it myself to be." "To be unbeatable," Kira finished. "Yes, I figured that out. You wanted to humiliate me, to prove humanity was not worthy of standing beside the great coalition species." She smiled then, and it was not a kind expression. "But you made a critical error, instructor. You assumed we would play by rules designed to make us fail. You assumed we would accept limitations imposed by others." She turned to face the entire class, and I finally understood what I was witnessing. This was not just one exceptional human. This was a message. My species spent 10,000 years killing each other over resources, territory, beliefs, Kira said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. We lived on a planet that tried to murder us with weather, predators, diseases, and natural disasters. We had no venom, no claws, no armor. What we had was stubbornness, creativity, the absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible just because someone said it was. She pointed at the gauntlet entrance. You built that to break spirits, to teach humility. But humility and defeat are not the same thing. I learned everything I could about every system in this academy before I arrived. I studied the biology of every species I would encounter. I memorized technical specifications most people consider useless trivia, because that is what humans do. We adapt, we overcome, we survive. The human cadets were standing now, their expressions transformed. The other species looked uncertain, reevaluating everything they thought they knew. Kira turned back to Vexnal. You wanted to know what makes us think we belong here? This, right here. We do not quit. We do not accept defeat. and we definitely do not let bullies decide our worth. Vexnal's mandibles trembled. For a moment, I thought he might attack her. Then, slowly, incredibly, he lowered his head in a gesture of acknowledgement his species reserved for worthy opponents. "I was wrong," he said quietly. Each word seemed physically painful. "About your species. About you." He raised his head, meeting her eyes. "You have my respect, Lieutenant Moss, and my apology." The chamber erupted. Not in laughter this time, but in stunned conversation, cadets from every species talking over each other, reassessing, reconsidering. I saved my recordings, flagged them as priority historical documentation, and sat back in my observation pod. 50 years ago, humanity had been discovered playing with primitive fusion drives. Today, one of their representatives had just redefined what it meant to be a warrior in the Galactic Coalition. Kira walked to the medical station to have her injuries treated, surrounded by human and non-human cadets alike, all asking questions, seeking to understand. I knew then that I had just witnessed something significant. Not just one cadet passing one test, but the moment when the galaxy truly saw humanity for what it was. Not the weakest species, not the newest addition desperately trying to fit in, but survivors who had climbed their way up from nothing, who carried 10,000 years of stubbornness in their genes, and who absolutely refused to be told they did not belong. Vexnal stood alone by the gauntlet controls, staring at the data logs, trying to understand how everything he thought he knew had been proven wrong in less than an hour. I could have told him the answer. Humanity did not belong in the galaxy despite their limitations. They belonged because of them. Every weakness they possessed, they had learned to turn into strength. Every challenge they faced, they treated as a puzzle to be solved rather than a wall to stop them. The session ended. Cadets filed out, still talking, still processing. I remained in my pod, reviewing footage, already composing my report. Tomorrow, training would resume. There would be new challenges, new tests, new opportunities for species to clash and learn from each other. But something had fundamentally changed in that training hall. A line had been drawn and crossed, and every being who witnessed it knew that humanity, stubborn, adaptable, absolutely unreasonable humanity, was here to stay, whether the galaxy was ready for them or not.